Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. A pleasure to be able to chat to you today about this really brilliant film. Maybe for people who don't know anything about it, what can they expect from a Gaza weekend?
They're allowed to laugh. That's what they can expect. Because normally from Gaza, you're expected to just hear about the misery, which exists, but you can get that from the news. In this film, you get to see real people being themselves, having fun, and even though as difficult as it is living there, they can still laugh, and so can we. So it's not laughing at people, but it's laughing at the situation.
And I can't believe when because I watched it without sort of doing my background research, and I can't believe it was devised before the pandemic. So, it's been sort of a decade in the works. Was that very bizarre for you? Like, did you feel like maybe you'd had a premonition?
It was extremely weird because we started filming early February, and everything we had, like in the opening sequence with people queuing at hospitals, airports empty, we'd filmed that. And then the next day we were looking at the news. It was in China and Italy first, and this is bizarre. And then eventually caught up with us. And we had to escape. Like the scene at the port, this was us at the airport, me, Stephen Mangan, the producer, and another guy, another actor. We had to get out on the last EasyJet flight out of the country because the hotels were kicking us out. So it was really weird.
So weird. But so considering you didn't use the pandemic as your inspiration, what had sparked kind of this concept? And why did you want to make that kind of like the premise for your film?
Okay, so the film actually started by a selfish bullshit networking thing. So I was at the Cannes Film Festival trying to sort of network and hustle and get to know people in the film industry. And I have a friend who is she's a documentary producer, Oscar winning, and she asked me, "What do you have next?" And I had nothing, so I just came up with this on the spot to impress her. And she was like, "Oh, that's great. I should put you in touch with this workshop so you can develop it." And so I actually had to write it so I can get a free trip to go and write it with some experts advising me. So that's how it started as a networking lie. But I also basically wanted to flip the table. So Gaza's under a crippling blockade for it's been like since 2007, like collective punishment. So how can we talk about something miserable that in a way that hasn't been done before? Because it's there in the news, it's there in statistics, the information is there, but a lot of people are ignoring it, or they were like, well, it doesn't affect me. So we can talk about to humanize, because they in the news it's simplified and it's just like a piece of land that's blockaded. You don't actually see people. So it's through comedy that you can show humanity.
And I mean, I guess there's a great British tradition of sort of coping with tragedy, with comedy. And, it's always said that comedy comes from tragedy. And a lot of
Yeah.
the stand up comedians, for example, often say that they, actually have difficult things in their lives and get up on stage and sort of have a release by making fun of it. But of course, when you get into sort of political territory, perhaps it gets a bit more tricky, especially in this day and age. It's sort of a hypersensitivity, isn't there? Things taken out of context. Did you have any trepidation about sort of tackling this kind of topic with comedy, with humor?
Well, so yes and no. The yes, I since birth I've always been a controversy because born Palestinian to Palestinian dad, English mother in Israel. So I've faced racism from the day I was born. I'm a demographic threat to the state of Israel. That's how they see me. So most of the laws are made there to contain me. But so I'm used to that, and I don't give a fuck, and I go on with my life, and that's my existence is my resistance. But on the other hand, you get tired of always fighting the system, and so you just have to exist and do your thing, and hopefully the goodness and people will notice you, and will see you as human. It's very basic, and it's very embarrassing that we have to say it in this day and age. But on the other hand, like you said, the sensitivities of politics, talking about it. So this humor is coming from there. So the Israelis are going to find it funny because it's reflecting real people. It's not caricaturing. It's caricaturing everyone's character. Everyone's equally offended. So the Israelis will find it funny because there's a lot of inside Israeli jokes. The Palestinians find it funny because it's there. It's the people not there who love slogans and love political campaigns and political correctness who will think, oh, maybe this is offensive. And we've had that. Like, we've had a big festival previously in London who thought, and they were all white British, thought this is offensive to Palestinians. And I was like, well, they wrote it, they're in it. I don't think so. But people there don't take offense because it is part of that humor.
And tell us about your wonderful cast. And I guess I don't know whether it's, how much influence you have from like having parents of different nationalities, and particularly Steve Mangan's character kind of playing up sort of the British, like way of sort of being a bit sort of awkward in lots of situations. You're playing that up for laughs, particularly. And I've known him from being on our screens for a long time. So it's quite nice to almost like plant him in the middle of all of this and sort of see how he reacted to things.
Yeah, so my mom's English Irish and my dad's Palestinian from Nazareth. And so they live there, and she, they got married and she moved there and uprooted her life. And it was the late 70s. So it was very different to here. It was much more impoverished. She came from London, taking the tube in one of the, biggest cities in Europe, to a little town of 40,000, Nazareth, where my grandmother still had a donkey to carry the shopping. That was then. Now, everything with the internet, everything's changed. But yeah, so it is a bit a reflection of my parents, because my mom's very polite and proper, and this is how things are done, and my dad's Palestinian, where people talk loudly. You think they're fighting and shouting and in an argument, but actually they're just passionate about something. And even so, family members will have a fight, and then an hour later they're having lunch together and all love. So it's a very different culture. And it's always funny to see how they both handle stressful situations very differently, but they manage to get through somehow. So that would have been my inspiration for those two characters. Yeah, definitely. Also, some of the details are based on me, but so we've got some other. So the woman who plays, the actress who plays the Israeli Karen, her name is Muna Hawa. She's from Haifa. She's Palestinian. And I did a lot of auditions, and she was the best. And even though she's Palestinian, but she grew up among Israelis. So she knows what they're like from the outside looking in. So that was very interesting. And a lot of Israelis, can't tell the difference, but some of them know because she's kind of famous on TV there. But yeah.
And with Stephen, did he have to do sort of a bit of catching up to kind of understand that culture? I don't know exactly his background, or did you kind of
He did not, because
play like a character?
No, I told him, no background, no character, because a lot of his lines is what the audience is asking. So he's there to ask questions and she explain, or the other Palestinians would explain to give a bit of context. And he's there as a journalist who's supposed to know everything, but there are some nuances he doesn't get. The only thing I needed from someone to have a good comedy timing experience, and he had that. I was a big fan of episodes, and so a lot of what was nice about working with him, a lot of his lines, his best lines, were we would shoot the take and keep the camera rolling, and then I'd be like, and I always say, just finish it on a funny sentence, and every take was different, and we would choose one. So that's what he brought to the table. Some very good, just one-liners that were amazing. And I think his background also, as not just as an actor, but also as a writer, he knows to stay within the parameters of the script. Some actors will like to show off their improvisation, but he's like 2 words, and he knows that's going to go in the edit. If it's too much, it gets cut out.
And I mean, tell us some of the highs and lows of shooting it, because, like you say, you were going into a pandemic just as you started, and but it does really feel very kind of rooted in that place, and there's a real good sense of kind of being there with them, and all the different characters and the sights and sounds. So, how did you manage to pull this off? Did you kind of have to wait for the pandemic to blow over, or how did you manage?
Well, so filming it was a lot of fun. We had the best catering ever. And even Steven's like, even it's better than Hollywood sets. And then one day it was, I think, the 14th of March. So a day before the 15th, when the world shut down. I think it was a Sunday. And we were in a cafe. We're like, okay, we hear there might be a shutdown tomorrow. We're not sure. Waiting for the Prime Minister to make an announcement. The hotels we were staying at were all nervous. People were flying out. And then next morning, it was Sunday, so it was a relaxing day. I, as a director, had to go to do some location scouting, so I had to work. 11 a.m., I get a call from the producer. I was in the shower. I miss it. I come out, and then they say, 40 minutes, a taxi's taking you to the airport, pack, and you got to run. Last flight, I've booked you. And it was like out of a scene from my own script. So we went, we were like, okay, pandemic, couple of months, we'll be back. So we put all our stuff in storage, all the sets and costumes and props. A lot of the props were hand sanitizers that we bought in bulk, but there was hardly any left in the country because of us. So we were giving out hand sanitizers for the crew who stayed behind, which was quite funny, very ironic. Pandemic happened, June came back, July, okay, can we go back? Yeah, we can. Oh no, there's quarantine. Okay, we'll wait another couple of weeks. And then it was going on, couple of more weeks. You know how it was back then? We open up, somebody sneezes, they shut down again. You need to quarantine 2 weeks. No, you need to quarantine 10 days. This country open, this country totally shut. It just was like that constantly. Israel was very, very tight. Like, they were monitoring your movements with a phone. They were sending drones flying between the flats to make sure people were indoors. So I nearly got on a flight 3 times to go back to film, and then got cancelled like a few hours before, until January 21. We were like, Israel's never going to let us in to finish. So where can we film? So we looked at Jordan, and we finished the second half of the film in Jordan. They would take us, because at the time Britain had the Kent variant, and we were like on the naughty list. So they made an exception for me and Stephen to go to Jordan. They gave us a special visa. And we finished it in Jordan. So the film is a patchwork of 2 different countries. So you've seen the film, there's a car chase at the end. We only shot half of it in Israel, and the other half a year later. So it was quite a task that I had to sort of rewrite a little bit, just because the locations changed, to see what we filmed, look at the edit. We did a rough edit, and then like slot in what was left, and so it looks seamless. It was with the geography, some of the small roles we had to get local actors and patch it all up.
And did you also have like a favorite moment on set, or one that you watch the film back now that's like your favorite scene or anything?
Favorite scene? There's so many funny stuff. I would say there's a joke Stephen says, Hamas and hummus, he can't tell the difference between them. And that just came out of nowhere. That was his line. And it like cracked me up. I tried to make him repeat it, but it didn't come out as naturally. So that's the one we used. Yeah. So the scene was supposed to end much before that. And then he just, gave that little extra nugget. And that was priceless. I think that's going to outlive me and him.
And ultimately, what do you hope people take away from watching it? Because, like you say, it is just unbelievably entertaining, and there's lots of the comedy that's just sort of straight up comedy, and it could be in any sort of context. And then, of course, there are the bits that are kind of making sort of indirect political comments, and there's a real irreverence about that, and kind of
Yeah.
this coming together of understanding, the water shortages, and how difficult it is to get supplies, and it's like, oh, well, we've been living this nightmare, long before you got here. So it is there, but it's kind of subtle. So what do you want people to take away?
For first thing, we've not seen comedies in the cinema since COVID. Like it's all been big, massive movies. And that is the most fun experience, is watching a comedy and laughing with everyone. I think the last one I watched was Licorice Pizza, and that was a good laugh, but I can't remember since COVID except that one film. Like I remember way back watching Juno in the cinema in what was it, Cineworld Central, and everyone was laughing. And Juno's about a teenage pregnancy, and the irony of it, there was a woman, or I would say a teenager, she was like 16, 17, with a baby that was screaming, and I was like, don't you get what's going on here? Anyways, but that's I would love people. I wish we can get some more comedies in the cinema. That's one thing I'd like to get. The other thing is, I do want people to get that from this film, that the humor travels and can bring people together, but also introduce you to new cultures and stuff that you think, oh, this is just happening in the news somewhere else. It doesn't affect me. Like, for example, what's happening in Sudan. I'm sure a few years' time there's going to be some films talking about the war that's breaking out there, and also Ukraine, and there's going to be a few dark comedy films coming from there too. People are people, and they're going to need a release, and I think we see. I'm trying to give you a good soundbite here. We see headlines and they're very shallow and generic, and we never see the people. And I think through this film, I'd like to show you the people who live in Gaza, that they can be funny.
Mm. Yeah, or it's almost, I remember someone saying, it's almost like you Trojan horse, like sort of different issues. But if you do it through comedy, people kind of let their guard down a bit, don't they? And they're not kind of.
Especially their preconceptions, they let it down. Okay, this is a toilet humor comedy. There's a lot of toilet humor. And I'm not trying to sneak any agenda. I'm just trying to show people.
And of course, you've already been on quite a journey with this film. I know it got a really good reception and award at Toronto. And of course, now it's going to be at the London Comedy Festival. I think, is it next week? So, how have you found the reception so far, and what's it been like, seeing people's reactions?
So it's been really, really good. Like the first screening, the premiere in Toronto, I was extremely nervous. But like the audience reaction was as good or better than I'd expected. There was a rush queue around the block, and they told us, the festival, that the film sold out within a few hours. So that was hugely satisfying. Unfortunately, because of the way cinemas are right now, and they're not, it's all big films, it's difficult to get it into cinemas, especially in this country. So at least I know I've done something right. It's not fault of us. It's just the environment, the way the world and entertainment's consumed these days. So I'm hoping a UK audience will also find it funny. The humor, like you said, is very British inspired. I got inspiration from as well, like Only Fools and Horses, the Wheeler Dealers. There's a little bit of Michael Palin's A Private Function. So that, and there's a lot of lowbrow jokes, but Monty Python style. So they're pointing at some tough subject, but they're masquerading as toilet humor. So I think the audience here will get it.
And already you had your short, it was nominated for an Oscar, right? Was it in the running?
Yes.
And then I know this one took a long time. So thinking where you've come so far? Do you know what you're going to be doing next, or have you got some aspirations to delve into a different kind of genre or to work with certain actors? I don't know.
Well, I am. So this one I've dealt with Gaza. The next one I'm dealing with the Cold War, the Russians and Americans. So I'm going through a list of who to offend. Which are the most powerful nations to offend? So that's my next thing as a feature film, and I'm also developing a TV series, which is a comedy, espionage comedy in Venice.
Amazing. Well, yeah, I think definitely what you said earlier. I think we're all in need of a bit of lightening up and a bit of comedy now. So yeah, I'm sure everyone's going to love watching A Gaza Weekend, and can't wait to see what else you do in the future as well. Lovely to
Thank
chat to you.
you too.
Thank you so much. Have a
You're
great day.
welcome. Have a
Thanks.
good day.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.